ideas that I've been thinking about. This is the Friday CoolZone, just making kind of abstract art, something interesting. Naranjas, let's fucking go! So I was thinking about going back, playing around with some of this, not this exact style, but some of the ideas kind of from it. So it's basically, all this stuff is based off of the League Rigs, kind of like painted color mixing stuff. So I think if you just search like League Rigs, maybe just landscape, you see different stuff like that. Yes, please. So my idea, I'm thinking about taking this kind of texture, wrapping it around like some kind of primitive shape, a cylinder or something like that, and using it to color or to affect particles, and just kind of play around with that and see what happens. So all this stuff is based off of kind of like photography, like fine art, or someone is mixing some colors, taking a picture of it, and then that's like the base texture that's used to drive stuff. CoolZone time. Wow, how's it going? So there's different ways that you could look for this kind of stuff. Usually you could even do it with typography. I was doing it at the top here, compositing my logo on with like this is like a paint splatter or something like that. You'd use noise functions as well, just like any kind of lore or volume displacement head. I love volume displacement head. Yeah, that thing's pretty cool that he does with either volume displacement, or I think he was also setting it up like refracting through a grid where the texture is changing the index of refraction or something to get some stuff. So I think both of those ways is pretty cool. But yeah, it's a generally pretty cool effect overall. So I'm gonna try something slightly different with it and see what happens. All this stuff is pretty cool. How? Yeah. So I'll just keep this tab open for references and stuff like that. And usually, I don't know, you could just search like ink mixing. Just go to images, and then you could play around with like some of these little search parameters or whatever that come up on the top. If you go to settings, advanced search, then you can also look for large. Steve GH, how's it going? So this will just try to give you higher resolution image results or texture maps. I don't know if people have certain websites or stuff like that they tend to look for. I think that there's some like just textures.com. Certain websites will also have like more curated kind of selections or results. I also have some folders and stuff locally I might revert to if I can't find something good, but just trying to show kind of the whole process and stuff like that. So maybe like you include acrylic. I think that's generally what they're using to get this very kind of like defined, super high contrast kind of look. It seems like the acrylic, the colors don't necessarily mix, like bleed or blur into each other. They still stay pretty sharp. So that's just why I was searching that. These ones here look pretty cool. So maybe we'll we'll start this one, just see what happens. So I'll just make a new new directory in the stream folder. Is this the 17th? And then I usually just make like text, TEX for textures or whatever. So I'll just save that there. We'll get Houdini going. All right, let me, I'm just gonna tweet out, I forgot to do it. Who is that guy on the splash? You don't know who that is? I updated my splash screen today. It's this guy on what would you do, I think, or something like that. It's a TV show. John Quinones. There he is. He's like a reporter, correspondent guy or something like that. He's got a nice smile to him. I thought it was a funny splash screen. Yeah, so I'm just gonna tweet out a link to this stream, so I forgot to do it earlier. Try to get some more people in here. All right, so you can do torus. I think I was talking about earlier, like if you do this NURBS stuff, you'll get kind of like intrinsic UVs, like parametric UVs, that essentially come with this kind of shape. So basically what I mean by like that is if you have a grid, usually what I do with this grid is you do like color based off of the relative bounding box. Then you'll just get normalized coordinates, kind of like UV attributes. So if I look at X, we have like a U coordinate, and then in Z we have like a V coordinate. I think you can do like a swizzle operation if you do that kind of thing. So this just shuffles the coordinates. So instead of X, Y, Z, the Z and Y channels are flipped or swapped around. So now I have like UV coordinates. And then if I just put my position, I can match the positions of this torus. So I can do like P equals primitive UV attribute from this auxiliary input. I want to get that surface position. For the primitive number, I can just put 0 because this is NURBS. So it's always just going to be one shape. And then for my UV coordinates or the surface coordinates, I can just use the color attribute. So this way we're wrapping the shape, we're conforming it to the sphere, or the NURBS torus, the donut. So any shape that you can have as a primitive or a NURBS shape, now we can conform this grid to it. You like where this is going? Hopefully it's going somewhere good. I'm still figuring this out as I go along, but yeah. So you do tube, you can do the radius of the tube to make a pyramid or a triangle. So basically all the simple geometric shapes, now we can conform this grid to it. You do higher resolution, you get a little bit better results. I don't know what other what else we have. I think it's just like torus, tube, sphere. Those are the only options. You can do some stuff with box and stuff like that, but it gets a little bit more advanced because it's harder to represent them as NURBs. And then as well, I think with this being NURBs, I was talking about this a little bit. If you do the carve, you can use this, I guess, to offset the parameters, but you can also use it to like remove or isolate a chunk of it. So this is still kind of isolated. If I want to, I can assign UV coordinates to this grid. So if I just do project, now we'll have UV texture attributes, and then if I do this quick shade, you can just visualize the coordinates a little bit easier with this. I don't know why, but these numbers get like flipped around sometimes. You might be able to do, I think I have to do it up here. You just switch these ranges around. Maybe not the first one. Now we have them a little bit more readable. So now just to visualize the carve, you can do interesting like deformations or stretching and animations and stuff like that with the texture, all aspects of it sticking or staying around or whatever. And it looks like with these, you can just do a nice kind of rotation if you don't use all of them. So you can do nice kind of simple abstract or rigs, I don't know, deformations or whatever, stuff like that. You can also even do like distortions and stuff like that, I think. So if I add a number, so we'll take like the cd.x, the U channel. If I just add 0.2 to it, you'll see that it swings around a little bit. Basically, we've offset the colors, so instead of going from 0 to 1, now it's going from 0.2 to 1.2. We get this spreadsheet out. I don't know how easy it will be to read. This text gets a little bit small. But if we want to wrap it around so that it stays between 0 and 1, like if it goes to 1.1, if you do modulus, this will just make sure to wrap it around. So 1.1 would become 0.1 with that. The reason to do this is if we add the v coordinate or the y to x, then you can get like a twist or a stretch or something like that. You could scale the amount that you're twisting and do interesting distortions like that as well. I don't know if we'll do, I'm just gonna leave it off for now. I'll just disable that carve, but it's cool kind of options to have in your back pocket. Some cool gems to keep hidden away. Yeah, so we'll get rid of the color maybe. We still have the UV, like the color is pretty much the UV attribute at this point. We don't need both of them. And then we'll just, we could use this to load our image. I'm just gonna set that back. This texture scale doesn't apply. This is like just if there aren't UV attributes, it will project using this. But because we already have UV attributes, this stuff just gets ignored. Then I'll just save this get it into the folder. So with the hip files, I usually just make a scenes directory. I'll just do this like colored donut. Could change it later on or something, but I don't know. For now, it makes sense. And then just getting this texture, grab it from there. If you want your textures to be a relative reference or whatever, you could just do this expression like that. And then as long as I keep my files in the same folder structure and directory and stuff, we have a nice, we don't have to update these paths and stuff like that all the time. So it's pretty cool. If you go back, try some of our twists. Nice. Yeah, it's already done. We finished it. So if I start to do some distortion to it, now it looks like it's harder to see that seam. It's kind of like flowing with the rest of the stuff. It's a bit harder to see. Kind of tricked people a bit with that. It just reads like one of these other lines or something like that, unless like an artifact. We could maybe try out some other ones. I don't know. This one seems pretty well, but maybe we'll take a look at some of this other stuff. Some of these people put the little overlay over it, which is unfortunate. It ruins it. This one could be cool. It's a pretty high resolution thing. So we'll put that in the same folder. Stuff's really cool. Sorry, it looks like CG. I don't know. It's like someone painted it that way or something. I don't know. These are all getting a bit. This one's pretty cool. We'll grab that one. And maybe this one as well. This color scheme, Picasso. This color scheme reminds me of the Lenovo. It's like yoga. Forget who made it. Someone made this pretty nice animation for this thing. You guys can check it out if you want. But yeah, it was like particles. I think they might probably just use like a noise to assign this initial distribution. You could use a texture as well or something. But yeah, this stuff at the end with the stylus hitting it, shockwave and all that stuff is super cool. Kind of reminds me, somewhat similar. This looks a little bit more purple than blue with the orange blue combination or whatever. This is what you were looking at. Yeah, so just duplicate this one out and take another look. Thing could be okay. I might be able to use this try to use this offset here to put the seam. Just try to hide that hemisphere kind of seam in the back, just to make it a little bit cleaner. I don't know if this one, we really twist it, then we can kind of get that other seam hidden. But I don't know. I'm not feeling this texture map too much. Let's try this other one. Some of this looks like we have some artifacts here. We could just make our source geometry a bit higher resolution before we distort it. Like if we don't have enough quads, you get some tearing or stretching or stuff like that. was pretty cool. Maybe don't want too much stretching. This is pretty cool here with the duality, like two different bit of a yin yang situation. Let's see, we have this. I think this one's working better. Save this scene again. Let's take a look at the last one. Bizarre. Bizarre, abstract, fluid, acrylic painting. Pretty descriptive parameter. It's maybe... This one could be pretty cool. You could do the same thing maybe with twisting it with the other direction. So instead of adding y to the x to twist in that direction, we take y and add x to that. Then we'll get twisting like around the other direction. Horizontal or vertical, basically. I don't know, because then we start to get a pretty big ripping happening there. It might be, if you do it, if you twist it perfectly, like one rotation or two rotations, then we can get them to line back up. Would be nice. So I'm just dividing by 0.5. It's the same idea as just multiplying by 2. That way that it will do precisely one rotation. If you just do it, multiply it by 1, I guess 1 is 1 rotation, 2 would be 2 rotations, and then you can get them to line back up, so we don't have a seam in that direction. So I don't know, I think these are generally pretty cool, but this this one before we did the twist to Y was I think looking pretty cool. So when we were getting like the two different black, blue, sitting on opposite sides, it was pretty cool. You're basically distorting the UV coordinates with your setup, right? And use the distorted UVs for the prim UV lookup. It's kind of, it's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it a distortion, but it's more of just like a scaling or a shearing or something like that. But yeah, if I just took this, instead of taking the position and putting it to the surface of this input, if I do E and just set it to CD, you do wireframe, I'm just doing this kind of distortion of like just an offset or a shifting by height. So if I don't do any offset, you get that. If I wanted to, I could do this as a parameter, like a channel float. I don't know, this one will be like X twist. So I'll just switch this to multiplication so it's a bit easier to understand. So basically, without this modulus, it's doing this, but it's going, like if you're using a texture, when you assign a texture to geometry, it will automatically wrap the UV coordinates to be within 0 and 1, but because this prim UV function doesn't do that, we just need to do the modulo by 1, and that just takes everything that's over here and moves it to be over there. So we can apply that. And then we have stuff that's wrapping around, and that's what happens. If you look at, this one's pretty cool. I think that's how I got here earlier. You look at the Houdini primitive parametric spaces. This is basically the idea of how these NURBS coordinates or whatever are derived. I don't know if they talk about NURBS. I guess they don't really talk about them in that section. But basically all the NURBS geometry types will have these. I guess they do have it. NURBS, Bezier. Maybe they just don't have that section in the help. But basically, you have a 0 to 1 coordinate space for all of these NURBS surfaces. So I'm just remapping the coordinates to that space or that other representation. Hopefully that makes sense. Makes a bit more clear. But yeah, I think this red and blue one is pretty nice. Pretty cool. So right now these quick shades, they don't actually change any attributes of the geometry. Like this color is just basically a quick material that is being visualized. You can do maybe attrib from map if you want to actually bake the color into the geometry. We have that one down there. So right now it's just doing that default grid. We can just copy this path and put it up here. So that's pretty cool. So I think with these, because this has a bit more advanced like texture settings. Or no, I think I still need to keep it like that. Yeah. The percent equals is basically a modulo expression. It's basically just saying do a modulo with myself and return the result. Like if you do 1 plus equals 1, you get 2. Because it's basically saying 1 equals 1 plus 1. So the modulo is a bit of a advanced kind of division type of operator. So instead of doing a division and returning the amount, it's just returning the remainder. So it's a simple way to wrap spaces around, essentially. If I just do this, Julian, how's it going? You do this pig head. Yeah, it's useful for step functions. It's useful for a lot of different things. Like if you're just repeating things or doing like pattern generation, it's pretty useful. So if I just do like primitive wrangle here, you do color equals the primnum. You just get 0, 1, 2, then it keeps going really high numbers above 1. If you do like modulo of 4, then you get 1 out of every 4 faces, where you could explicitly kind of color them if you compare it and say if that's equal to 1, then it will just be true. So I'm basically splitting this out and saying like give me 25% of the faces or 1 out of every 4. But hopefully, I don't know if this makes it a little bit more clear. but it's really useful for doing, you could just get interesting kind of like knitting or sewing, like stitching patterns this way. Yeah, so that's a good way to maybe think about it. You just do divided by, then you see that you get like a bit of a different result. We go over here to these numbers, it might visualizing math like this would have helped me so much in high school. Yeah, I don't know, it's I don't know if it works like that for everyone, but I would have learned math a lot easier if they actually like showed you how you could do like a knitting thing or like a twisting rope with like radians and atan2 and stuff like that, instead of just like looking at these diagrams. It would have been a lot easier to understand that kind of stuff. So basically, like the division function will give you the actual value, and then the modulo will give you the remainder, so what's ever left over, essentially. Hopefully that clears it up. So I'm using it here just to wrap the space around. If I don't do it, that extra area just gets cut off, or it's actually all just kind of like stuck where it's going above 1. And then if I do this operation again, I'm basically mirroring that space and just shifting it over to stay within the 0 to 1 range so that it's able to find where it needs to go. Yeah. So this attribute from map, like it won't always give you as good of results as this. This is actually doing a shader or a material. It's a gem for sure. These gems out. Because you're using this as a shader with a texture map, you can represent more colors even within a single face. Like it's using UV coordinates to read the image from disk. This is just baking the results into the geometry, so you're constrained to the resolution of your mesh or however many points you have. So if I just want more detail, I could just up-res that. You could do the same thing with the UV project node. I think so. I'm just using this UV project here to store like some rest coordinates, but I think I might be able to do it the other way. Usually, I like to do this rel bbox. Just, I don't know, it seems a bit more like you would start to map other geometry and stuff. It might not work that well for 3D stuff, but you could do it. Yeah, you could do it some other ways as well. So I'm up-resing my grid just to be, so it can hold more color values. So if you want to actually like record the texture values into the geometry instead of just visualizing them, sometimes you need a bit more detail or subdivisions on your geometry. And then if we want this stuff on particles, or just to make it a bit more interesting, like there's different things we could do. For example, we could do like key and add the normal to it. We kind of have like the peak SOP with that, just inflating the position along its surface normal. If you mask this or modulate it using the color, you could do the X component. Then we kind of have that Lenovo. Where did it go? This kind of effect where it's getting displaced. I don't know if they're using like a noise based off of the color value or using the color value directly, but this is kind of the same idea. You could maybe do some blurring to kind of refine that a little bit, just get more interesting shapes. That's pretty cool. Getting like a tidal, a whirlpool or something like that over there. So yeah, that's one idea of something you can do. You do CD, like a certain color channel. You can do luminance. Just do the overall brightness of the texture or of the color value. Get interesting things that way. Maybe this is a bit strong. We'd like divide, basically just doing color corrections to get different amounts. So this is what I meant saying, like doing this Lie Griggs stuff, but kind of just mapping it to geometry. You're basically, instead of just extruding boxes from it, now we're just warping it to flow along geometry or whatever. So let's I don't know why that stuff happens. It might be, we might need more resolution. We could also just smooth, just kind of blur stuff down to get it kind of like anti-aliasing, or blurring the result to get rid of some of that tearing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You can have a lot of control, like if you go back to the source shape, I can change the invert it, or I could do like a thinner, skinnier kind of tube or something like that to get just different shapes. We go up to a full radius, and then we also just have our other shapes, doing the sphere, doing the tube, the pyramid shaped tube. We got all of our basic shapes that we can use for interesting modeling or just composition kind of things. You could do, like, have a couple cones going and get like this weird hourglass, like Doctor Strange, I don't know, fractal dimension thing. Get some weird planet operation happening. Yeah, so I'm gonna take whatever this source shape is. I'm just gonna keep setting this up like a kind of procedural manner, just to try to keep it like pretty flexible. I don't know, it's always nice to be able to go up and try out different source, different inputs, and see what results you get. So let's maybe just do this points from volume. So this just fills the geometry with particles. You do this add scale attribute. This will record the p scale. And that's basically just like determined by this point separation. So if I do copy to points, and just put particles or spheres onto them, I think by default they scale it by 2. If you want them to fit together perfectly, I think you have to do like 0.5, because it's like a radius, like diameter, I don't know. It's just depending on whatever shape you're trying to put onto things. But basically this way, like if I update it, these will always be sitting close together without intersecting. And then if I want to, I can transfer or project the color attribute. There's a couple different ways to do it. Like one is using this attribute transfer. So this will like spatially find the nearest ones. There's kind of like a projection. Let me just go a bit bigger with the resolution. So basically just whatever the nearest color value, it will just copy that over. Maybe you can also do some stuff over here if you do like multiple samples. It will start to blur the stuff together. I'm just gonna switch this over to the disks. That might be a bit faster than like copying the spheres together. You also have the ray node. I think you can do a similar operation with this. If I just do minimum distance, then you can do import attributes from hits. So if I just do this, normally it will like constrain or move all of the particles to the surface. If I turn off transform points, then it will just keep, let me turn off the guide geometry as well. Then it's just copying the color value, like it's importing the color from the nearest surface, but it's not moving the geometry at all. Let's just go maybe some more points. It seems like these guys are getting pretty slow to cook with the amount of points that they have. But I guess it's just something that's only going to happen once, so it's not a big deal if it takes like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. It's not something that we're like reapplying every single frame. So we'll let this go. I just reduced the point separation. We should be maybe at like 2 million or 2.5 million particles now. This might take 20 or 30 seconds to run. I think part of it is because this grid is a pretty high resolution. Like we subdivided it or increased the number of divisions to be quite high, so that causes any of these transfer functions to behave pretty slow. Yeah, so it's taking like 50 seconds, close to 5 million points. You'd maybe go out of the disks mode and just back to points. It's just a little bit quicker for the viewport to display stuff that way. So it just depends. Yeah, I don't know. At some point you're gonna have to do a transfer like that, and it could get pretty expensive. But if I'm just using this as like source geometry, then it's not as big of a deal because we're not like running this every frame. So maybe I'll just do the pop network to make particles. This is what I might mean by the time dependent, like because this is a simulation. For whatever reason, I had my badges a bit bigger. I usually just do that as normal. But if you see this clock, that just means that every frame, with this update, the results will be updated. We don't have that, so it's just static geometry. Yeah, so do the source. I usually just turn off that guide because it's a bit distracting. We could just do all geometry, and then you can do this instead of 1, you can just do $ simulation frame equals 1. So instead of always activating or always generating points, we just want to generate them at the start frame of the simulation, or the first simulation frame. And you can just do a noise, like a noise force. So we'll plug that in. And we just get this uniform kind of like distortion, curl noise or whatever happening. Might be able to maybe turn that turbulence down, make the swirl size bigger. So we just have this like lower frequency noise. That's pretty cool. I might I'm just gonna switch this over for a second. I'm just gonna scatter points on the surface of the geometry. So we just have less points, and it should be quicker to run all this stuff. So now I'm just able to kind of operate in real time, something closer to it. So that's somewhat interesting, but it's not. It just looks very basic because it's like a curl noise. We can do this vex expressions. This will let you can override or change these noise settings now using vex or vex expressions, like simple kind of point properties or stuff like that. Like if I did the amplitude amp and mask it or multiply it, like the p, the position, the x component of the position is greater than 0, then we can just apply the forces to half of things. So it's easier to animate, or you have more control over this noise instead of just like a global setting that gets applied to all the points the same way. That's pretty cool. You could do this offset is a nice one to use, because this lets you kind of distort, or you can do some stretch the noise in interesting ways. So if I add, this is like 4 components to it. It's like X, Y, Z, and W, or time is the last one. So instead of just adding 0 to all of those, if I add like the red channel, then you start to like distort. So instead of the noise being perfectly smooth, you are basically like offsetting or distorting the noise using the color value. You can multiply it or scale it to depend like how much stretching. Like too much is just too high of a frequency. If we just multiply it by 0.2, then we just have some subtle kind of distortion or extra little details kind of being added to it. That's pretty cool. So I might do maybe mask the amplitude by the color. Maybe we'll do the Z component, or like the blue channel. So this way we're changing the frequency or the offset of the, not really the frequency, but we're just distorting the noise using the red channel, and then we're changing the strength of the noise based off of the blue channel. So it will just become more impactful for the blue areas of the color. I might go back up here, just make some more points. We'll just get this a bit more filled in. We're doing 1 million. Should still be pretty fast to operate. The scatter, initial scatter, takes some time to do this relax iterations, but you can see we're still getting pretty fast performance. So now we're just able to get a lot more like dynamic or interesting results from the particles. So instead of that uniform undulation, it's just a lot more interesting to have kind of differentiations of smooth and blurry, or like really, I don't know, diffuse areas. Yeah, it just looks a lot cooler. So maybe, yeah, it's an interesting abstract. You just keep adding noise, or distorting your noise with every parameter. You like cross all the wires together until you get interesting results, kind of. It's kind of like doing music. Like if you ever played with a synthesizer, you kind of just have all these signals that you're like feeding into each other until you get like weird like feedback loops or weird things that are driving other things that sound interesting, or in this case look interesting. So maybe instead of my offset just being with the red channel, I'll do luminance and just do the brightness of the color. I'm gonna try maybe doing a smaller swirl size. That's just like the overall scale or frequency of the noise. This is kind of cool. This is like water and then land or terrain or lava. I don't know, something a bit more rigid. Maybe we'll do some drag just to kind of keep stuff a little bit under control. The drag is kind of just adding like thickness to the air, so pieces, little particles don't fling off as easily. Instead of moving through a vacuum or like anti-gravity, the drag is kind of like it's moving through a thicker medium, or like quicksand or something that's just a little bit more resistance to travel through. I think this kind of form and everything is feeling pretty nice. Let's maybe just move forward with this. So maybe I'll go back to the slower one to cook. So this is 5 million particles with this one that exist on the inside as well. And then this one I was just placing points on the surface so it would run a bit quicker. But this way we're able to apply everything to kind of a solid form. We won't see as many gaps as the stuff like gets pulled apart. So even on the insides, we still have points or stuff happening. Let me, I'm just rethinking this pretty quickly. So I think maybe if I just do poly extrude, I'm just going to use this to make some thickness, kind of like VDB works or something, where you're just simulating like a bandwidth. This is kind of like the sparse narrow band on the flip fluid, where you're just simulating a certain distance to the surface instead of all of the interior. And this poly extrude is converting from NURBS to polygons. It will only operate on polygons, so it's just something to be careful about. And then it looks like this is not picking up my shape properly. I don't know if I need to do... Maybe I need to switch this method. VDB from particles. Let me see what happens. So with this, I don't know if it's the normals. I was thinking that that might be it, but I think it might just be that the way that this stuff gets constructed, the normals might be fuck. So if I just do reverse, like you were seeing that the normals were just pointing the wrong direction. I don't think that that's the case. I think that just like the way that this node constructs things. It doesn't know about a shell. No worries. It doesn't know whether it's like a shell or inside. It's just basically like looking at the outside of the shape, and it's not smart enough to figure that out. So what I'm doing here, like, I guess this might not be the best way to do it. Let me just do, this is going to be easier to understand. So you can just do VDB from polygons to make it the main shell. And then if I just do the reshape, instead of dilate, erode. So this is kind of like the poly extrude, pulling stuff in or out. It's kind of like a peak sop. Then if you do combine, then I can do like intersection is where they overlap. Difference is would include the shell. So if I look, let me convert to you can use that convert sop, or should go to the normal one, convert VDB. And then I'll just use this thing to do like a cross section, clip sop. So we're still getting the shell, but it's defined inside of the volume. So I think if I do it like this, and then I set this sign distance, maybe this one isn't smart enough to, let me just try one more thing. So if I do fog, I'm just going to convert the VDB from SDF to fog. So now we have it density volume. All right, we did it. We tricked him into doing what we wanted it to do. If we wanted to get rid of some of the kind of artifacts, I think we can just do like a bit of smoothing. It also might just not be, we might not be offsetting this enough. So now I think it's a little better. So I'm basically doing like the same particle separation size, but instead of making 5 million, now I'm just making 1 million. So I could even go like a bit lower in point separation. I don't know why it's still having trouble. Let me think about this. You also have this VDB visualize tree. You could use this to create a point from each voxel. This one might be a bit better to switch to. So if I do resample, using voxel size, this is kind of like doing points from volume. So I have the same slider here that I can do, kind of set my point separation. It should just be a bit more stable. I'm not sure what they're doing inside of that. That was kind of being a bit weird. We might get some stair stepping that way, so I'm just going to control it using up this voxel size at the source. We should be okay with that. So we have 2 million particles now, but they're all just sitting at the surface. And I think we can just continue on with that. So we did a little brief diversion, but hopefully you can see the benefits. We have a lot more speed when we're simulating stuff. I might be able to even go down a bit smaller with this stuff. So I'm basically still able to have some thickness, but I can have a lot of definition or detail when this stuff rips apart. So basically we took that diversion just to make it so that we have this kind of bandwidth, but we're still not putting any particles in that empty area. But when we render it or do stuff like that, it should still appear to be like a solid shape, pretty much. We need more spacing, or more. If you're starting to see through it, you might want to go in and like change the bandwidth or this reshape. But I think this is working better. Just because before I was like losing some of these spikes and some nice like high frequency detail. I wanted to keep that because it was really making this look like a crashing wave or something that I really wanted to keep. Yeah, so that looks pretty cool. One thing we need to be careful about is that this one isn't assigning p-scale to stuff. So you can just do maybe like attribute create and set a p-scale using this. And then I'm just gonna link the voxel size. So just do copy parameter, p-scale, and the value will be linked to that. And then this way, if I go into here and switch to disks, I'm visualizing the p-scale that way, just by the disk size. So if I turned it off, it might ruin my viewport performance, but basically you'd see these go up to a unit or pretty big because the points wouldn't have a p-scale attribute yet. I'm just going to go back to points. It's just a bit quicker when you have a ton of points to do it this way. Let's just make a camera and do a redshift light. So I've pinned my viewport or the camera or whatever to the light. I'm also just going to go in here and get the redshift render view. I'm just going to try to do like a quick rim light. So we have the camera on the other side, and we'll just do like our light is like a glancing angle kind of thing. I think you should just do like the backslash button is like the hotkey to jump between the previous and last thing that your view was set to or constrained to. Just gonna move this. You just go into world space now and keep moving this stuff around a little bit. I was just worried that this rim was going to be like a little too aggro. Like directly behind stuff is too too much of a rim. It's like you only see the edge basically. Yeah. So we just go into here under redshift. We'll do particles. Do the p scale, and then this way is just the optimized way for redshift to do a bunch of spheres. If we want to test, you just do this preview IPR button. So even now the rim is a bit, it might even still be too aggressive, but I'll just leave it here for now. Boost the light, and if I go to the redshift ROP, just turn on diffuse bounces. This will just help the light lead a little bit more to the front of the object. It can like bounce around and just penetrate through the form a little bit more. I'm just gonna go back into that light. Keep this guy looking through the camera. We'll just start to move it. Now we have some more of this detail. This thing here is a bit unfortunate. I don't know. Let's try. Moving over here, maybe the other side. This could be better. Something like that, starting to be pretty interesting. We'll stop the render and get a shader going. And we want the point colors, so we need to get the particle attribute. How many lights would you plan to use on something like this? It depends a lot with the look you're going for. I don't know. We look at this, some of this stuff here. Like this might just be a HDRI, like a pretty diffuse, a constant value. I'm kind of planning to maybe just go more rim. I try not to really go like higher than 3. Even 3 sometimes is like a bit too much. I don't know. I mean, it's like the classic 3-point lighting setup, but sometimes it's nice to have like a lot of dark, mysterious area. But it depends a lot on just like the reference or what kind of like lighting style you're looking to replicate. So you might want, the default material is like plastic, but the roughness is like perfectly reflective. I usually make it a bit blurry. The rest should be okay. We'll try to apply it. I think my OBS doesn't like me doing that for whatever reason. Let's see if it worked. It did not. So I'll just assign it this way. And now we can do another render. We should see the colors. We do. So yeah, so lighting, I mean, I usually like to just stick with one, and then looks like you can see the corner of it. You can just turn off visibility there. Sometimes you could do like normalize intensity. This way you can make it bigger without everything getting like overexposed. So this is just like a softer, it's like a bigger box light someone might have on set or something like that. Basically like reducing the contrast in things. Maybe something like that. And then usually before adding more lights, what I'll do is go in with these grids and use them like the bounce cards. So if I just leave it here, like basically what this is doing is reflecting some light back onto things. So I'm gonna get out of the light, unlock it. And then if I just move this to be on the other side of things, like you can already see that it's kicking a bunch of bounce light. It's almost too much light. Let me go back to the camera view. So there's a few different, I don't know why sometimes that doesn't update. I think just for any good resource on learning lighting, like you can even just do photography or look at photography tutorials for a lot of good lighting tips. There's one book I think I have, or maybe Illuminated Pixels. This one's about like digital lighting. There's some good breakdowns and stuff that they talk about in it. But I don't know, I mean, like, some of this stuff is a bit outdated because it has to do with older renderers where people weren't using this like bounce lighting technique as much with them just because it was like computationally expensive. There's this one that I have here, Light, Science, and Magic. This one has these kind of ideas that I'm doing here with like bounce cards and stuff like that. This is more from a like product photography kind of perspective. Like it's less to do with computer graphics and more of just a general lighting kind of thing. That was the one you just yeah, I think that's better. Like I don't even think that I ended up getting that illuminated pixels one. Yeah, I think. Yeah, so that's I would just start with that Light, Science, and Magic. That's a pretty good one for just like the basics and stuff like that. Let's get the size of this bounce card. You can get like, it's basically changing the intensity of that reflected light. So now we just have this subtle kind of stuff happening. I'm gonna move the camera around. Maybe just try this classic default framing. You could do like maybe just overall intensity of everything. Then we'll just get more bounce lighting and more, I don't know, rim or whatever you want to call that. Maybe I'll try another light. I'm just gonna put another one here. And I don't know why this redshift is, whoops. All right, doing too much. Turn that off. I need to go into the redshift thing and do a redshift light. And then I'm gonna go back to my camera. Yeah, I got ahead of myself. And let's give this one a try. So I'm just trying to get a little more of like a kind of wrap or stuff happening around here. Just trying to stay pretty subtle. I guess I just need to like refresh that. I'm just trying to do pretty small incremental changes. So just something to reveal a little bit more stuff going on. The basic bitch 3-point light setup. Yeah, I mean it's not too bad of a one to start with. It's pretty cool though. I mean, like once you really get into it, like you watch any movie, just start to like try to think how they lit the scene or how they set it up. Once you get like fully into it, you won't be able to like unsee it or ignore it. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Like if you ever see someone with a lighting a reflective scene, like anything, even the eyes, like people's eyes kind of behave like HDR, so you can see it and then see if they actually like put in the different grid lights or where their light sources are and stuff like that. Maybe pull that back a little bit. Subsurface scattering with good lighting is nice. Yeah, the subsurface scattering on these particles is a good idea. I think this lighting is starting to be pretty cool. I just wanted like to wrap this form around a little bit, but still keep some stuff kind of mysterious or in shadow. Subsurface is cool. You can also do, because this is like a GPU renderer, sometimes like refraction, just a bit of refraction, and making everything like a bit blurrier, you kind of have like a subsurface scatter effect. These things turn into like little orbs almost. That's like what I was doing with certain particles of that sand thing. Maybe. Certain ones of these I was turning into like a glass, a little reflective particle or whatever. But I don't know, I think overall it could be cool to have like the white or the brighter ones transition into this material. I'm just gonna turn that off for right now. We could try subsurface. Sometimes let me just reduce this radius. Sometimes you have to restart the render after turning on like a new feature or a new part of the shader just to get it to realize you've changed that setting. Sometimes, I don't know, when you're trying these features, using this snapshot thing is a good idea just to make sure it's actually working. So I'm trying one with it on and one with it off. You kind of see the difference. Brisarn, how's it going? This is subsurface, it's pretty noisy, it just takes more time to resolve, and then without it, I think it's pretty nice. We'll keep it on, and then we could play around with this radius. This is just how much it's bleeding into the surface. So with too much radius, we're just losing too much contrast or detail. It's a bit odd. It's also just going to be super noisy. Just will make your render time super long to resolve that noise. So I think something just subtle is nicer with it. Yeah, so I think that's pretty nice. You'd see some. Did the chop network become depreciated? I don't think so. It just doesn't. It just depends what you're using it for. But like, it seems like if anything, they tried to revive it. To open up a new scene. But basically, like all the object constraints, they transitioned them into using chops networks. So it's definitely starting to become more used, or like you have to use it. But if you go up here at the top to this constraints tab, I keep this stuff with my icons a bit small just because I don't use them too much. But if you do display large icons, or I don't know, I guess I lost the text when I did that. So if I do deprecated or depreciated, I guess it's the same idea. If you do a camera and then you have like this sphere, let's just try to pull that guy back a little bit. Right now it's always just looking at that thing, but if I do like look at, and then I grab the sphere and press enter. This is asking for an up vector or something. You could just press enter to forget about it. Then you see you have the little like signal processing icon. I think what it's doing is it puts it inside of it. So it's making my constraints out of this, and it's using them like that. It depends what you're using it for, I think, a lot. Like people used to use it a lot more to change like deform or animate geometry, but because they've made like Vex and Vops so robust, and it's fast, like this is a bit slow to operate on every single point of the geometry, but for global things it's pretty nice. Like you can add a noise, maybe to the, I don't know if this is gonna work, but you could add like little noises to things and do that kind of stuff. I haven't used it that much recently, so even this new stuff, I don't know it too well. If you go into this motion view up here, where did it go? Viewers, viewers, motion effects view. Then you can see the different like signals and stuff, the different positions. I think I need to switch this somewhere to like time-based. I'm not gonna get too into it, but it's still used a little bit. It's definitely not as much as it was before. So I wanted to go in and get rid of some of this like pattern. Is this VDB from particles like is using the grid or voxels to lay out those? You see some artifacts like that. So just go back into the camera and also just save this scene. Go into our torus. So basically this shape right here has this grid. So even when I add noise to it, it's just expanding that out and we'll still see some of those artifacts. So we're gonna fix that. You could just do a jitter. This is the same idea as the like vellum grains when we were doing some of that stuff a few weeks ago. We could use this or not to hide like that banding or some of the artifacts from it. So you can just kind of build that ourselves. If we just add that point jitter, I'm just going to copy and put in the same key scale. You might want to divide it by 2. Still see a little bit of it, so maybe just keeping it where it was. So this way it's not really changing the profile, but it's just making these points better, like more evenly distributed instead of like clustered, kind of like a grid. Yeah. And then let's go back to the first frame. Looks like we have some faceting. So this won't tell you, but it's basically converting the NURBs to polygons and then rasterizing them or converting them into a volume. And it looks like we don't have a ton of detail. If you want to, you can do this convert. So this converts NURBs or converts anything to polygons, and then you have U and V. You can put higher numbers in to get more subdivided, high resolution things. We fixed that issue. Then I'm just gonna go even a bit smaller with my voxel size. Because this reshape happens in voxel space, right now I have it set to do that operation in voxel space. Like changing the resolution changes the distance that it's getting reshaped in. So I might want to double that or go even a little bit higher than double, just to make sure I'm still getting the same thickness. Otherwise I'll start to see through some of this stuff too much. So this stuff is a bit slow. I'm just going like maxing out this stuff to be pretty high resolution. I wouldn't really suggest working this slowly unless you're like, I'm already pretty clear on the direction I'm heading in, so that's why I'm basically just going into like the final finishing touches are the high resolution settings. So we have 42 million. This might be too many particles. We have a couple options. So I think after I combine things, I'm just gonna go up to like 325. Once you get at a certain like threshold of voxel size, like even a small adjustment makes a big difference. It's like a volume, a three-dimensional image or stuff happening, it goes up by the power of 3. So it's just kind of, you have to be careful because like you won't visually see that much of a difference, but it changes the results pretty drastically. So now I'm just at like 25 million. That could be better. I'm just gonna erode this surface a bit so we have like a thinner bandwidth. This way we'll still have the same particle spacing and particle scale, but we'll just have less points overall. So now we have 14 million. That's a bit more manageable. Lincoln Black, how's it going? Discord is down. For everyone, all the Discord servers? Yeah, it looks like it's not working for me. You guys are doing another DDoS attack today? Someone's DDoSing? At least Twitch, so I know that Twitch was down like a week ago or something like that. The big outage. Yeah, so we have our close to 15 million. This one we were doing frame 34. We'll just cook this, go back to something close to that. They can DDoS these nuts. So this should take maybe one or 2 minutes to simulate, but again, like because I've already tweaked the noise and defined the shape and the lighting and everything like that, that's why I'm working so slowly right now. You're kind of like working blind at this point, but because I've done all the defined where I want the shapes to be and everything like that, I'm able to do it. If I was actually like still tweaking the noise and changing where things would end up, this would be too slow, or like I wouldn't want to work at this pace, just because you'll never like really get anywhere meaningful. We'll do that. Like my cache is even so slim now, I can't even go back or forth a few frames because it's so many particles. I'm gonna go up forward a few more frames and just try to get away from something a bit more abstract, like less defined of an edge. Hopefully this stuff will like spray out a little bit more, just become a little bit more interesting. And then with all these particles, rendering them, it's a good idea just to only keep the things you need. So like right now you can see that this memory, it's like around 1 gigabyte or something. But if I just keep, we want the P scale, so that Redshift knows how big to make the particles, and we want the color. We did like a third of the memory storage. So we'll try it, do another render. It's going to be a bit slower because it takes Redshift a bit more time to copy all the particles into memory, and I think doing the color override for a ton of particles in the shader is a bit slower, but okay. So we got rid of that grid artifact that we were seeing, and then we just up-resed. We got the particles a little bit smaller, made our form a little bit more defined, like a higher resolution. So I might go into the grid. This is like my bounce geometry. I'm just gonna make it a bit bigger. Seemed like we were losing some detail over here. And then under redshift object, like I can see the corner. Just turn it off for primary rays. So this just makes it only visible for bounce lighting, essentially. It's kind of like a phantom object for mantra, if you're familiar with that kind of like render visibility. You do the same idea, invisible to primary rays, then you can see that it says phantom. It's the same idea, but just for redshift terminology. Yeah, so this is feeling a bit better. It's like a painting. You started with a painting texture, we end up with a painting in 3D. It's a pretty cool result. Just go into the outs. Sometimes I'll get greedy with these bounce lighting. Again, because it's a GPU render and everything is just pretty fast to calculate. You go quite high. With mantra, it's like just doing one GI bounce is already like destroying it. Then I usually just do more samples, do more, reduce the error threshold, just so it gets rid of more noise. Then that's usually just like starting points that I'll use for like a final kind of render. I don't know, if you really wanted a nice end result, sometimes you go up to like 4K or something like that. I might just leave this where it is and just try something with this wider aspect. Maybe I'm gonna just duplicate the camera for now. I'm gonna go up here and just try, just gonna play around and do like a really anamorphic wide resolution one. So it's like 4K by 1.5 or something. I'll just save this again and do like a bucket style render, not progressive like final quality one or something close to it. So again, it's going to take some time to copy all of the 15 million particles from my memory to the graphics card memory. But it still looks like it's pretty fast. Might want to do some of this photographic stuff and kind of save highlights from burning out a little bit with it. Just do overall maybe lower the exposure. But yeah, we have a ton of detail. If I knew I was gonna go and crop it like this, like I might actually delete the particles from below the hemisphere or below the camera frustum. And then I could just have a ton more detail. At a certain point, like you would just have too many particles to render on a GPU render, so like it might be other problems. But for this kind of stuff, for a CoolZone edition, I think we're still doing pretty good. I don't want to really like ram too much. This is meant just to be more like quick style frames and stuff, and not as much like final ultra high definition like final renders or whatever. Yeah, we'll probably wrap it up pretty soon. If anyone has any questions? What is the meaning of life? What is the thing in the Hitchhiker's 42? They give them some number for the dolphins or something like that. They ask him like what the answer of the equation to life is or something. 42. So yeah, I think this is pretty cool. Still might want to play around with that shader a little bit. I don't know, the specular. It's just a bit odd, I think, in some. I don't know if my specular highlight is 69. 42069. So was it Ed Vino? I don't know if he's in here right now, but he was posting the thing on. This is like the the new fight for, instead of the fight for 15 minimum wage, the fight for 42069. You only work 4 days, 20 hours maximum over the duration of your week, and then you're getting $69 an hour. This is the new progressive fight. So yeah, I don't know if this is still playing around with some of the colors and stuff like that. What's your go-to way to define the particle size? I use age life most of the time, but wonder if there's other interesting takes. Yeah, I mean, the age life is pretty good. Like, these are all gonna have the same age or life, so it's not really gonna change stuff. It's just, you could use anything you come up with. Like, basically with this, you could get the total distance that it's gone from the surface. That way you could simulate kind of like these things are fading out as they get further away. So you could just do a post simulation, like look or check to see how far these are from that base torus. And then that might be pretty cool. You could do, this is done rendering, I'll just get this. Whoops, the other one. Full screen. You could do maybe like the length of the velocity, like how fast things are going, and make the faster ones shrink them down a little bit. This is a pretty nice area, a nice like lighting response. You could use stuff based off of this color, like we were doing the same idea for the forces. You could do maybe like the brightness of the green channel is changing the size of them. But yeah, it's just playing around or coming up with whatever you want, whatever you think looks good. Does that maybe you have more questions than answers now? But I think just playing around, exploring, I don't know if this is I don't know how helpful this would be, but basically, like with 3ds Max, they had this thing with this Krakatoa, and then they had something for it that was, I think called Magma. That's kind of like the same idea as VOPS, but it was in 3ds Max. But people talk about that sometimes if you look at old Krakatoa or old things. So basically based off of like the velocity direction, you can do change the color value, or you could also change the p-scale value. So I mean, it's all just attributes, it's all data, whatever you want to drive with it, whatever you think looks good. I tend to just leave them all the same size. The other thing I was doing pretty typically is like just doing this attribute randomize. So if I set this to p-scale, and then you do, instead of set value, multiply, that will just, instead of overriding the existing value, now it will multiply this result against the existing value. And then if you do a custom ramp, then you can just define like your distribution. So we might just have a few that stay the original size, and then a lot of them will get a random smaller number. you would probably want to use this. I guess my point count isn't changing, but when you're working with particles, you generally want to use their ID, just so that they don't flicker if you start deleting or adding more particles. But yeah, you can do that. You could do like a noise based off of the position and change the p-scale. There's like unlimited possibilities. It's just up to you to discover the best one. So we'll just save this scene again. I might move the display flag somewhere different so it doesn't really slow down when you first open the scene, like a slow cook or something like that. Yeah, so this is going to be it for today. Hope everyone enjoyed it. If you have a Amazon Prime subscription, you can link it with your Twitch account and then use it to subscribe to me, and that helps me out, helps out our community, helps us grow. You get to use the awesome sub emotes, get the gem, might add some more, get the Kim. You have the best emotes on Twitch, the hardest working streamer on Twitch. Yeah, I'll be on tomorrow most likely. The schedule, I still have the panel, and there's also the calendar schedule or whatever. So I don't know. I'm sure that there's some people that are streaming like 12 hours a day or something, but generally they're just playing games or stuff. I don't know. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed it. I'll be putting this link in the Discord or whatever. I'll see people tomorrow. All right, take it easy.